An unfortunate part of riding your e-mountain bike is that you're probably going to have, a little bit of a taste of dirt now and again, a little lie down. Not a big problem. So today, I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can avoid those crashes and stop you rolling around in the dirt. Now this will catch even experienced riders out. Cross-rutting is where one wheel goes into one rut and your other wheel goes into another rut. Or maybe you're riding a really rain-eroded trail and you get those horrible pinch ruts. They can definitely slow down your flow. Either way, if you're hitting a rut, chances are you're probably going to hit the deck. Now the best way to avoid getting cross-rutted is by looking down the trail, quite a few bike lengths in front of you, and looking at where those ruts go and anticipate where they're going to take you. So you act before the rut takes you. Or a really simple way of doing this is to ride in like an S shape, so you carve in and out of the rut, again avoiding getting that horrible cross-rutted situation going on. Whoa, the classic, the loop out. Now this is really common to do on a steeper climb, particularly when you've got that seat raised nice and high and you're in one of those higher assist modes like boost or turbo. All it takes is a small rock or a root to lift that front wheel whilst you're applying power, and you can see that front end loop out and sit you back on your bum down the back of the trail. Not a good look. Now a great way of avoiding that loop out scenario is to get that seat slammed down nice and low. That way your center of gravity is going to be really low on that bike, and you just need to pick your line really wisely. Look ahead and look for features that could lift your front wheel up, be it a rock or a root, and try and plan a nice smooth line around them. Also just make sure you've got that weight on the front of the bike to stop that front wheel lifting up. Now if you find that front wheel lifting uncontrollably high, it's time to get that back brake covered, give it a quick squeeze. That way it's going to stop that front wheel lifting up and could save your day. Another version that is closely related to the loop out is the rollback. Now this can be pretty daunting and sometimes see you lose traction or stall and roll backwards down the hill in reverse and get flung off the bike into the bushes. Not fun. The easiest way to remedy the rollback is to get way ahead of when it's going to happen and get your feet down and get those brakes applied. Don't wait for the climb to fail, as this will be too late. Look and feel for alarm bells like loss of traction, slower cadence, and not making the crest of a climb, and get ready and plan that escape route really quick. No matter what you're riding, uphill or downhill, the best line to choose is the one of least resistance. That way you're going to keep all that flow and momentum running on down the trail. But it's sometimes not quite as simple as that. If you get knocked offline, things can get pretty messy pretty quickly. When it comes to picking those right lines, one part of the puzzle that is really important is to keep your head up nice and high and look down the trail quite a few bike lengths and anticipate the terrain that is coming towards you and whether you need to make that line choice. Look for lines that are going to keep your momentum and that flow in your wheels. You also need to think about your body position on the bike, what gear you're in, what power mode you're going to need to be in, and also your seat height. Now it sounds a lot, but you get all those pieces of the puzzle together pretty quick, you can make those line choices really quickly. Wet routes can be a surefire way to be lying on the ground super quick. Wet routes combined with muddy tyres can be just like ice. The worst crash here is that front wheel washout. Rear wheel slides are definitely easier to deal with over that front wheel sliding out. Picking your line is super important here, and try to go the most direct route and square that route off as much as possible. Try to minimise the time your tyre is in contact with the route is also a great idea too. Faster can sometimes work out better, as can lifting your front wheel out of the equation too. Remember, less routes and routes with bark on are going to be close to that tree base. A bike with the suspension set up incorrectly can also cause a crash due to the weight of the rider being in the wrong place of the bike. Now, a classic example of this is when you're riding a steep trail and you've got the fork set up too soft. You hit the brakes, the weight of the rider goes forward, it compresses the forks, makes the head angle really steep, transfers your weight forward, and also off of that rear tyre. So you've got no traction on the rear and your weight is right on the handlebars. Not a good look. Now you really need to get your suspension set up correctly, and one of the most vital parts of this is going to be the sag of the suspension. Now you need to get this dialed in on the rear shock and the front fork to make sure you're in the right place. Another loss of control could be from the rebound speed of your fork or your rear shock too. So just make sure they're really dialed in, especially if you're getting those wheels off the ground. And if you're not sure on how to do this, we've done plenty of videos here on the channel, or head down to your local bike shop. Now, a chain snapping on your e-mountain bike could definitely see you hitting the deck, particularly if you're on a steep climb, you've got a load of power going through there, that instant loss of traction and that breaking of the chain could see you flipping over the handlebars or to the side of the trail. Now here's how we're going to avoid that happening. Now the chain on your e-mountain bike is one of the most important parts to look after out of the whole bike. It's a really good idea to inspect that chain regularly, cycle it backwards, inspect all the links and the rollers. If there's any breakages or twisting going on, then you can replace it as a quick fix out on the trail with a quick link, but it is purely that, just to get you home. Any more than that, then I'm afraid it's time to put a new chain on that bike. Whoa, now that was pretty sketchy. Now a surefire way of hitting the deck is by riding a trail way too fast that you've never even been down before. You might overshoot corners, you might hit jumps that are in fact gaps and not tables. A surefire way to be hitting the deck pretty quickly. Riding trails that you don't know at full speed is a definite recipe for disaster. You should definitely take your time on those first runs. You never be hitting jumps or drops because they could have gaps in them. And also blind crests should be taken with a bit of care too. Take it easy on that first run, or maybe follow a local down. Make sure you use the right tyre for the terrain that you're riding. For example, if you're riding in the mud, if you run a summer tyre which has a hard compound and a shallow tread pattern, you're definitely asking for trouble. And likewise, it goes for tyre pressures too. If you run your tyres too hard, you're not going to have a lot of grip, or if you run them too soft, you're going to have an unstable tyre. Now to avoid all of this, just make sure you're running that right rubber. If you're into technical riding, make sure you've got a soft compound aggressive tyre on there. And likewise, if you're riding in the muddy conditions, make sure you've got a wet weather mud tyre on there. Keep an eye on that tyre wear too, and that vital pressure. Just make sure that's pumped up to the correct rider weight. Getting your wheels off the ground is a great feeling, that's for sure, but it's getting them back down to earth where sometimes problems will occur. If you're jumping double style jumps with a gap in the middle, you might come unstuck with the overjump or the horrible case. Both of those I definitely don't recommend. If it all goes wrong mid-air, it's time to adopt the safety pencil. Get your weight back slightly and into the middle of the bike. Get that front wheel raised nice and high and stay off the brakes. This position should get you out of most airborne maneuvers that have gone drastically wrong. So there we go, a few of the most common e-mountain bike crashes that could possibly happen to you out there on the trails, and a few tips to save you from rolling around in the dirt after. But get involved down in the comments box down below. Let us know what your worst crash was on your e-mountain bike, or maybe even send it in using the uploader to get it featured on the show. Give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to us here on EMBN, and make sure you check out the merch shop too.